never been afraid or shied away from speaking about my people and sharing about my people and championing us. Didn't necessarily have an easy start in my teen years and growing up, family situations. And I think that definitely created that fighting spirit in me. And I always said to myself, I'm not moving to London. Don't want to move to London. I want to stay in Birmingham. I really feel like I can set up a career for myself here, no matter what anyone says. I remember God telling me during that season, do not complain, because in 2011, when the riots were happening, Mark Duggan was killed. I remember watching the news and God saying, I want you to portray these young black people in a better light than what people are seeing them in now. We're still OTB, we still exist for the black creative community, we still exist for the black business community. But over the years, as we've tried new things and we've always moved with the community, and one of the things that we found that came up a lot was being black in the workplace.
You said earlier on that you haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's possible. So I'm curious, when you think about bigness and the vastness of what is possible, what would you like to see happen with OTB?
Wow.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Leadership. Today I have my multi-award winning founder of Out the Box. She is a community builder, she's a speaker, she's a writer, she's an editor. She is a lot of other things, even though she doesn't like to shout about herself much. But we're definitely going to delve into all of that and unpack the amazing journey of Renee Davis. How are you doing?
I'm good. I rushed to get here because I wanted us to get as much time as possible, because I've been really looking forward to coming on here. It's been a while since I've done a podcast and just really got into the nitty-gritty of just my work and OTB and stuff. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure. And you've done a lot. You've OTB, writing, a myriad of different things in your career. So I want to ask you, who is Renee Davis? How do you answer that?
Interesting. Do you know what? I always used to lead with, I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I'm a founder, and I still include those things, of course, because I've worked really hard to be in those positions, but I am a person first. I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie, and I think acknowledging those things first is so important for me at the stage that I'm at in life, because career and business goes like this, right? And I think you always need to kind of have that thing that underpins you. And yeah, I always kind of try and go back to that. But as well as those things, yes, I am a founder of Out the Box. I am a writer. That's the first and primary thing that I kind of came into my career with. I'm a communications manager. I'm a community builder. I'm a speaker. Sometimes reluctant, but I'm a speaker. Yeah, all the things. And you know what as well? I'm a champion of people as well. I think that's everything that underpins all I do. I just love to champion people, my community. That's really important to me.
You've always been a champion of people, even when you go back, younger you, 10-year-old you.
I've always been very caring, I think. I think one of the things that my dad used to say to me when I was younger, because I have younger brothers, and my dad always used to be like, you're very caring. You're really caring of your brothers. And they will say it's bossy and whatever. And what my dad used to always...
Was it bossy though?
And people still say it, but my dad always used to point it out as caring. And I think I see people. I think that's what it is. I'm not always being, what's the word? I've not always been diligent where people are concerned, but I've tried to always see the best in people and their talent and what they're good at and what they can do and what they're passionate about. And I've always paid attention to it and tried to make people speak, feel and seen in that way. So yeah.
When you think about you seeing people and bringing out their talent, which you've done in a number of different ways over the years, I'm thinking for a younger version of you coming up, I know you talked about your writer and your journalist. Was that when, from a younger you, was that skill set unearthed at that point in time, or did that come later down in life for you?
You mean my talent with writing?
Yeah.
You know what? I have always enjoyed, first of all, I was always into English at school. I was really good at English and writing and stuff. And even in primary school, whenever it was time to like write stories and come up with ideas, like my mind would just go. Like it would go to random places. And I knew I was good when one day my teacher read something that I wrote and she was like, go and show this to the head teacher now. She was like, go downstairs. Because we used to get little stickers,
Wow.
like different awards. So if you did a really good piece of work that your teacher was impressed by, you'd go to the head teacher and they'd give you like a special sticker. And I'll never forget the sticker. It was gold and purple and it said head teacher's award in it. And the story that I wrote, it was about it was a take on the Three Little Pigs, but it was the Three Little Pigs sail to the seven seas. And God knows where that idea came from, but I ran with it. And the teacher was like, wow, go and show. I think her name was Mrs. Hawkins at the time. Go and show her. And then another story that I wrote was about a little girl that finds a newt and sneaks the newt home. And
Neat.
newt, you know, the little lizard looking
Yeah.
things that you find in like the woods or like by a riverbank.
Why neat?
I don't. Oh, you know the inspiration. You remember Matilda, where they have a newt in the classroom and they put it in the glass jar, and then
Yeah, they catch it. Yeah.
it flies into Miss Trunchbull's mouth, and they're all laughing. That was the inspiration. So then
Oh,
I kind of
okay.
so I'd build around pre-existing things, and just run with it. So that was another story that my teacher was really impressed with. And to this day, I still have like she typed it up because in those days you didn't really you wrote everything pen and paper, but she typed it up and printed 2 copies. So I still have them, and I do intend to do something with them in at some point in the future. But I've always just been very imaginative and creative with writing, so I always knew that's something that I wanted to do.
So then you're getting your awards. The fire around writing is in you. But was it very much like I want to become a journalist, or was it I want to become a writer?
Good question. I think the journalism thing probably more because when I got into like my later years of secondary school, I was really into like media studies, anything to do with the media and that industry. I was just in love with because I've always been very creative and I've always been into the like to the arts and culture. So I knew that I wanted to go into media. So at college, I've always been rubbish with exams and things like that. So I've swindled my way through. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say I was a straight A student because, please, I wasn't. Like terrible
Mm.
GCSEs, but I knew that I was going to do a BTEC in media, and I knew that it was really practical and it was worth 3 A levels. So I said I'm going to use that to go to uni and do a joint honors in media and journalism. And God favored me because I actually got an unconditional offer to De Montfort Uni to do my degree. So then I knew that, okay, I could slip the journalism in there and then start the writing thing again, as well as obviously study media. So
Wow, okay.
yeah.
Well, when you went to university, then did you find it easier because now you're in your element, you're doing what it is you wanted to do, therefore exams and all that are a lot more straightforward.
We still had exams, but there weren't very many. And because it was around, I guess, a subject matter that I was really into and that I knew about and cared about, it wasn't too bad. And I'm not going to say uni was easy because I actually had to defer twice in my first year and my second year. And then I had to retake modules over both of the summers. So I was this close to quitting a few times. And I'm a very resilient person. Like I fight my way through things. So I said, no, 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 no. I haven't come all of this way to just give up and stop or start again. Like, this is what I want to do. I know I'm just not the most academically minded, but I'm very intelligent and I'm very creative. So I, don't get me wrong, I knew I had to pull my socks up. So I pulled my socks up. And I think by my final year, I got into the swing of things again. And yeah, I was good. I think the thing that really helped me with my writing was I actually started a blog. And what did I call the blog? Out the Box. So that's where the name actually comes from. And the reason I called it Out the Box was because I used to write about Black community, Black culture, Black history. My lecturers didn't necessarily always kind of grasp the subject matter. And they always used to kind of, oh, yeah, you're not understanding the assignment quite well. And I'm like, I am. You just don't understand the subject matter that I'm writing about. So I said, let me
Uh-huh.
start a blog because I feel like they're boxing me in. And that's why the name came around. But it solely existed for me in the beginning, just for the purpose of perfecting my craft and kind of not getting discouraged and feeling like I couldn't write and do the thing I wanted to do. So yeah.
So in those moments where you almost quit, you almost walked away, you might sound like, that sounds like, but you did manage to talk yourself around. But what did you actually do in that process? Because I'm sure there's a gap between I really want to quit and okay, I'm going to do this. That middle bit. How did you navigate that space? Did you speak to other people, or was there something else that you did?
I had my mom to in my ear a lot, and she'd be like, "Don't you dare!" And it wasn't in a way of because they never forced me into academics. My parents were never that way inclined, but she was like, you've always had a fighting spirit, and don't let this discourage you. Just push through and do it. So I think what actually helped is that no one was around in the summer when I was retaking pieces of work or redoing modules. So I think having that quiet space, I was in Leicester at the time. So having that quiet space where there was no one to be distracted by, there were no parties, there was nothing on, I could really like just get my head down, have some quiet time and focus. And of course, I prayed a lot. And I just said, you know what, God, I know you brought me here for a reason. Just help me to push through and finish. And I think having conversations with my friends and people that I was really close to at the time was helpful, because I used to think, maybe it's because I'm just not smart enough and I don't get things straight away. And they were like, it's not that. Like, just keep pushing, keep applying yourself. So I think if you come out of your head and speak to people, they can shift perspectives and reality for you and actually make you realize actually we all have we have our battles with education, with work. Just keep going.
Where did your fighting spirit come from?
Good question. Life.
None of those.
Life didn't necessarily have an easy start in my teen years and growing up, family situations. And I think that definitely created that fighting spirit in me.
So when people say like life, and then you look back at those experiences, being able to turn, I guess, negative situations into something positive and into fuel is it's a powerful thing. It's not an easy thing to do, because that also means that you need to have been able to sit inside some of that mess and separate oh, there's a patch of it that makes sense from nonsense. Like separate both those two elements, which people don't always want to do. It's very easy to be able to avoid it. So I guess I'm asking for your perspective. How did you manage to be able to pull on your experiences from a young age and turn them into fuel to drive that fighting spirit for you?
I think just having the knowing and the sense that everything always works out in the end. I think because I'd seen that happen so many times, with my mom, with my family, because I'd seen like when we've struggled and we've really needed that thing to pull us through, God brings it about. Whether it's through people, whether it's miraculously, whether it's, our circumstances changed. I've always kind of had the rough with the smooth. So I think when you have both and you learn to navigate life with both in tandem, when you're in the middle of something, you can always refer back and say, but we made it, but we did it, but it worked. So now what? Like, you're not going to get through again? Because another thing is I don't like shame. So I think for me, I'm like, I'm not dropping out of uni. I'm not doing that. And there's nothing wrong with it because, you know, it's not for everyone. And if you find that it doesn't work for you and other things do, great. But for me, I just said, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the rough with the smooth and just think about when I've graduated and I'm holding the scroll and I'm smiling in my pictures and everyone's proud of me. I'm just going to push forward to that.
How are you writing about Black stories, Black women, Black communities? Why not pick a subject that would have been so much more easy to talk about?
That was easy to talk about for me. That was the thing that came naturally. That was the thing that I was the most in tune with. And that was the thing that I cared about more than anything, to be honest. And I think I've never been afraid or shied away from speaking about my people and sharing about my people and championing us. I think because I grew up, even from a young age, I've always grown up around my culture and community, whether it was through church figures, whether it was through family members that were running business. I think there was always something to look to. So I'd always seen Black people in the best light. So for me, it was like, I want to write about that. I want to share about that. I find of course I'm a Black woman, but to me, Black culture is the most fascinating thing in this world. And you know, I used to pick up magazines. Like, I was an avid magazine reader when I was a teenager. I used to buy Glamour magazine every month when it came out. I used to spend my little £3 and buy it and sit and read. And I used to say, this is what I want to do, but I want it to be about my people. I want it to be about my community. So it was just a natural thing. My dissertation was about hip hop and the media. Like that's how
Oh, I want to read that.
I'm going to find it. It's on an old USB. But yeah, that's what I decided to do my dissertation on. So just in me.
You've pushed through. You got your degree. You're out there. You're skin in your teeth. You got that certificate in your hand. What next?
Ooh. So it actually went downhill first, to be honest. But not for long. It wasn't long at all. So I graduated in July 2010. And because I was on a course where people by that point had already gone off and worked at a newspaper or a magazine and had already started, you know, getting bylines, and they had a little bit of writing credit to their name, I was a little bit behind in that respect. Because let's be honest, a lot of the people on my course were nepotism babies. So they had ways in, they had connections and contacts.
They had that hookup already.
I had the hookup.
In.
I had to create my own. And what I did, I think just before I graduated, I contacted an online magazine called the New Black Magazine. And I couldn't put a face to the name, didn't know who the person was. I just knew the name, contacted them. I said, I'm a media and journalism student at DMU. I want some experience. You know, could I write for you? And they were like, of course. So I remember when I left uni, by that time I'd written a few articles for them. One was a piece of work that I used from a previous journalism project around honeymoon destinations. Don't ask. And then they gave me the opportunity to interview Soweto Kinch, jazz musician, from the UK. And that was my first ever proper telephone interview. And I remember being like, wow, I'm really actually doing this. So that was another published piece that I had. And then I didn't really get anything after that. I was trying to work because once you finish uni, you've got no money. You don't really have anything major lined up. So I started to volunteer. I went back to night college. because I said I'm going to get my maths grade because I unfortunately didn't get it at school. I got a U at school. Embarrassed to say. So I said I'm going to get my maths GCSE and apply myself. And then I was also working in retail, and my relationship with God at that time was getting really close. We were a lot stronger because at that point I started to get really depressed actually. In fact, severely depressed. I was very depressed. I think it was like a lot of circumstantial things, relational things, as well as just trying to, I guess, find my way after 3 years of education. And I remember God telling me during that season, do not complain. And you're like, okay, cool. Not gonna complain. Things are hard, but I'm not gonna complain. I haven't got any money. Don't have a job yet, but I'm not gonna complain. And I was working in a retail store, and I remember specifically putting clothes on the rack and remembering, don't complain, be grateful because the opportunities come in. And I was connected with someone at my church, and she pointed me in the direction of somebody that could mentor me. He's an amazing man from Birmingham, and he pointed me in the right directions and gave me opportunities to apply for things. And I always said to myself, I'm not moving to London. Don't want to move to London. I want to stay in Birmingham. I really feel like I can set up a career for myself here, no matter what anyone says. The BBC's in the mailbox. I can see if I can try and get like a little runner job there, you know? And he was like, would you move away? And I was like, if the opportunity came, yeah, but I prefer not to. And one of the jobs that he sent my way was a job in journalism working for a charity. I'm not sure if we can say names on here, but it was a large charity in the
Yeah,
UK,
Salvation Army.
Salvation Army. And he sent it to me. And as soon as I saw the application, God said, that's your job. And I was like, oh, okay, London. And I was like, okay. And I knew prior to that I was going to move anyway. I just really felt that deep down. So I applied, got an interview, and then there was a whole palaver with me getting to London. My dad was supposed to drive me just for that moral support and just help, because I thought I'm already going to be nervous. I'd like a slow drive down, prepare myself. And my dad's car broke down the night before at midnight. So it was not even like it was in the
Oh,
day. It's not even like it was in the day. At the time, I was taking driving lessons, and I had my last money for my driving lessons put aside. So I had to use that to get a train to London. The night before, though, complete tears. I ripped up my interview letter. I was living with my cousin at the time. Ripped up the interview letter, and I said, I'm not going. Nothing's working out. I've tried to not complain in this season. I've really been diligent. I've been doing all I can to keep myself busy. Why isn't it working? And she was like, you're going. Give me the letter. She pieced back the letter with a little bit of sellotape. And she said, I remember she was in the next room, and I could hear her praying. And she said, you're going to the interview. She was like, call them in the morning, first thing, and ask them if you can move the time so that you can give yourself time to get the train and get there. So I took the train. I didn't know where I was going. The interview was in Elephant and Castle. I'd heard of it before, but I didn't know how to get there. And when you're like 20, 21, and you've not really spent time in London like that, it's very daunting. Yeah. So I met this lady on the train, and she was like, you look nice. Where are you going? Do you have an interview? And I was like, how does she know that? And I was like, yeah. She was like, where is it? Told her, and she was like, oh, I know where that is. I told her the street name, and she was like, I know where that is. It's by a big roundabout. So she directed me. To this day, I think she was an angel, but yeah, she directed me. And yeah, long story short, got the job. And within 2 weeks, I'd packed up and moved to London when I was 21.
I'm not gonna lie. When you're going through a period of feeling down and out and feeling depressed, and you're hearing God say to you, "This is not something to complain," Like listening at that kind of times, like well, you don't know them I'm hearing right because like your circumstances around you, this is the prime time to complain. Like, so for you to be able to listen to that voice
Mm.
and not complain,
Yeah.
and obviously opportunities came out, you were still reaching out to people, connect with people, the
Yeah.
mentorship happened, and you stepped into that, even though it was very hard for you to walk away and move away to a brand new space without your family around you. It's such an amazing testimony of what can happen when you actually just listen to God and
Yeah.
just follow through in obedience, even though you don't know what it is you're doing, you don't know what it is you're going. And it can really lead to remarkable opportunities because, like, the Salvation Army was huge. That they had what 40,000 a week readership that you were stepping into. So that's not an easy space to go and operate in. That's a hard one to land. Even if you compare it to some of your peers who are already working in, like I said, Nipa babies, they already had connects.
Wow.
You landed in a really good space, sounds like.
Absolutely. And I think even just the time frame, because by that time it had been about 6 months since I'd left uni,
No.
5 or 6 months. And actually, a lot of my peers and people that I went to uni with at the time, they hadn't even landed anything yet. So even on average, I was excelling quickly. It didn't feel like it. It felt like a long time because of the position I was in and how I was feeling and my mental health and stuff like that. But no, it was a very quick turnaround.
How was it being in a new space, a new city, and then spending what, almost 7 years in that incredible opportunity for you?
At first, I felt like I thought I'm a main character in this movie. Like, main character energy. It was, it was honestly, I was like, I actually can't believe this is happening, to be honest. And I think even just the fact that I'd studied for something for so long, like I said, I didn't have it easy at uni just because, academics not really my thing. But I did it, landed an amazing role for a graduate, and I just felt like, wow, this is life now. This is life now. I remember walking through central London because a lot of my interviews I'd have to go and travel to meet people across the city and sometimes outside of the city. And I used to walk around and look at London at night and think, wow, I'm actually a journalist. I can call myself a journalist. Had access to things that you wouldn't usually have access to. And it was just incredible. I was actually really proud of myself. But on the flip, the social life wasn't there. So London, what people don't tell you is London can be a lonely city. Yeah, because as much as I made friends at uni that were all from London, because at that point we were all working and we were all living in opposite sides of the city, it's not like we're in Birmingham, you travel 20 minutes to see people or you just go into town and it doesn't take that long. It was a different setup. And I remember thinking, okay, I'd come home from work and I had a room in a house and I'd just be like twiddling my fingers like, okay, what do I do now? But I'd say after about a year, it picked up. And I think even my living
Yeah,
situation, about a year,
that's tough.
yeah, yeah, it picked up.
That's a
And,
long
and that's
time.
not to say that I wasn't meeting up with friends and stuff like that, but it didn't really feel active in that sense for about a year.
No,
And then
no.
I had to move quite a bit in the beginning. So I felt settled in my job, but in life, I didn't really have that establishment yet.
So how did you begin to break through that cycle of loneliness and get to the point where you were settled and comfortable and this, in a sense, felt like home? It's not Birmingham, but it felt like home in a sense.
I think, to be fair, it helped that I was living with my cousin at first. That did help because I did have her, but my two cousins who are sisters, I had them. And then I went to a church that a couple of my uni friends had gone to. So I think when I started to go there and then get a routine around that, that did really help. Um, and I was still going through quite a few personal things at the time. So I think even finding that church home was really helpful for me and really kind of like grounded me into the city and just meeting new people. And then I moved to my permanent place that I stayed in for the rest of my time in London. Big up Southeast London, big up Lewisham. Lived there for 8.5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Big up South
Yeah.
London. I'm an honorary South London. I lived in South London for the 10 years. So yeah, that was
So
great.
you're settled in now. You know what you're doing. You know the area. Got people. Got a great church. You're anchored into that space. I think from that role that you had also took you all around the country, took you to other countries as well. And what was that like? Did that feel like you were living your dream when you thought about being a journalist, writing? Was this it? Or did you feel like something was missing still?
Good question. The only reason why I wouldn't, it felt like it, and I was really happy. And then I remember when I started to get that itch, and I remember when I started to feel nagged all day, every day, because in 2011, when the riots were happening, I after Mark Duggan was killed, I
Yeah.
remember watching the news and God saying, I want you to portray these young black people in a better light than what people are seeing them in now. And I want you to showcase young talent and young people that are doing amazing creative things and write about them. So at the time, the Out the Box blog was still going, and I'd done a few interviews with people that I knew that were doing really cool things, just because I've always been intrigued by that. I've always been intrigued by how people started things. I've been intrigued by their stories. So I knew, okay, this is the platform that I'm going to use to do what I feel in my heart I'm being told to do. But I sat on it for about 3 years and I didn't do anything because I was comfy in my career. I was comfy in my social life with how it built and the place that it
Really
got
good.
to at that time. And by about 2013, 2014, I felt like, ooh, I'm not feeling fulfilled because I know there's other things for me to do. So I set up Out the Box as an official website that showcased the stories of young, inspirational people of color or people from underrepresented backgrounds, but specifically black people, just because I felt like outside of sports and music, there's not really other types of portrayals or there's not other stories being told. And I remember when I launched it in 2014 and the amount of feedback that I got from friends and family and people that I didn't know that were like, this is amazing. This is amazing. And I remember one of my friends, Courtney, he reached out to me and he messaged me and he said, don't let me see that you stopped. Don't let me see that you stopped doing this. And I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, that's how Out the Box, I guess, got started. So there wasn't even any events at that time. It was just a website. Didn't know what I was doing. I just found a designer that someone at my church knew, spoke to him about the vision, went to meet up with him a few times. He designed the website, told me how to use it, put the stories on there, and I just interview new people probably about once a month and put their stories up. And then the events came much later, probably about a year later,
You're running
actually.
you're running that side by side with having a full-time job as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I did that for about 3 years.
When you started doing events and it started to get bigger and bigger, and I think to date now, almost 10 years in, you've reached over 5,000 people, which is absolutely amazing. Was this, was there ever a time, especially in those early days, where you thought this is what it could be? This is how big it could get to?
Yes, yes, and no. I think, and to be honest, even to this day, I still know that there's just so much more for OTB to
No, no.
do. So, but I think at the time, the thing that I shot myself with was the events because that was never the intention. And I remember at the time I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we'd meet up. His name's Paul, big up Paul. We'd meet up and just talk about business and just talk about how I can develop it to, I guess, reach more people, develop it to be better and stronger. And then the talk of events kind of came up, but I was kind of like, I don't know how to do that. So, please. But then I did start to think about it and really meditate on the fact that actually there's only so much articles can do. Wouldn't it be amazing if these people that I'm featuring could be in the room with their readers, and it could be an interactive event, an inspirational networking event? So I remember one day after work, I went searching for event spaces, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do something at Google Campus? Because at the time, Diane Abbott used to put on things for Black business women. So one of them was at Googling King's Cross. So I remember doing a session there, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do something in one of Google's spaces? So I reached out to Google Campus in Shoreditch, which is now, I think it's Google for Startups now. And I reached out and I said, I filled in their online form for using event space. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just winging it. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to see if they'll accept an event of this style, because I can tell that they probably haven't had anything like this in the space. And the only caveat was, as long as it's free for the startup community, you're welcome to use the space. So we ran 3 events there. And the first one was in September 2015. And we sold 70 tickets. They were all free. And I just stood there and I thought to myself, wow, I've done it. And I don't have any intention of stopping now. Let's keep doing this. So we had 3 more there. And then we went on to other venues. And by that time, people that worked in other organizations could see the movement that was building. And then they would be like, come and do something in our space. And that's how it continued on up until today.
What are some of the things you've been able to do through those events and workshops, and what some of the impact that OTB's actually had on individuals and organizations?
So I think some of the things that we've been able to do has been connecting people to people that they probably wouldn't have met otherwise or outside of that event. It's also been a space where people have left feeling inspired and feeling like they have the support and backing to go ahead and start the ideas and build on the passions that they have for things outside of their 9 to 5. And it really gave people the confidence and just a safe space to be around other Black people that were interested in the same things. You know, we'd really have a lot of fun in the spaces and at the events. And, you know, it was also a space for, even if you weren't a speaker, I'd also give people space to sell things. So anyone that had like a business where they sold jewelry, makeup, we'd set that up at the back. And then I think through the workshops, we were really able to set people up practically. So it was always an amazing thing for them to be in a space and hear from people that are doing amazing things. But it's another thing to actually practically sit down and learn from them for a couple of hours. So the workshops were really good for that. And the impact that I feel like it's had on organizations is that it's connected these organizations to groups of people that they probably wouldn't have otherwise been able to access. So I think that's been an amazing thing that OTB's been able to do.
And it's been running for 10 years, events here and everywhere. And I guess in a sense, after 10 years in, you're about to take it to the next level. What have you got planned for it?
Good question. So we're still OTB. We still exist for the Black creative community. We still exist for the Black business community. But over the years, as we've tried new things, and we've always moved with the community and kind of had our ears to the ground around what people are feeling, what they need, what they don't need anymore. And one of the things that we found that came up a lot was being Black in the workplace and navigating that and learning how to exist confidently amidst racism, microaggressions, stereotypes. And that was really kicked off by the Black Lives Matter uprisings. And I really just wanted to create a safe space for people to feel like they could be heard and seen, but also not even to just come and vent, but to have practical advice and solutions by a professional so that they could go back and apply it to their journey, their career journeys. So Black at Work now exists for that function, as well as allyship training. So we're really building on making that space more accessible. We're really building on making that space somewhere for the community to feel like I have a lifeline outside of work. I have a space, or I have people that I can go to and speak to and connect on these things that I'm facing. And it's one of the beautiful things about Black at Work is that we laugh so much. As much as these things can be difficult, we don't come at things from a negative standpoint. It's very positive, it's very progressive, and it's very informative. So that's something that we're really building on. And then in terms of OTB, we're thinking about how can we keep it the space that it is, but how do we make people feel like they're in a closer knit community? And how can we encourage people to cross collaborate with maybe other groups of people that don't have access to the spaces that we do? So that's something that I'm really building on and researching on, especially where young people in the West Midlands are concerned, because I have since moved out of London and come back to Birmingham after 10 years. So and I've always said, that I want to come back home and build something. So that's something that I'm doing behind the scenes. And yeah.
You said earlier on that you haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's possible. So I'm curious, when you think about bigness and the vastness of what is possible, what would you like to see happen with OTP
Wow.
and Black at Work?
So, you've got Union and you've got Unite and all of these places that exist for people in the workforce. I would love to see Black at Work become something like that, and something where a resource that people can use when it comes to career, work, how to navigate. You've seen what's been happening in the news this week with Diane Abbott, and sometimes when things get hard with Black at Work, and I think, is this really needed? Things like that just reaffirm that for me, because it's not on. And I think if we didn't exist, people wouldn't have a space to come and be like, this was said to me at work, legally, what can I do? So that's something that I just want Black at Work to continue to be. And I also want it to be a place for allies to feel like they can come and say, hands up, I run a team where there are multiple people of color, Black people. I don't know what to do. Can I speak to you? Can I learn? Can I come and share also? So I think that's something that I would love Black at Work to be. And OTB, I just want it to be in every space that young people exist. And I want it to be a resource in that way. It was always about young people from the jump. I was telling you the story about the riots and how I saw young people being portrayed. So I really want it to be that space where creative young people can connect to people in the space that are doing amazing things, that have the money, the resources, the connections to also bring them up. And I've always said this, and it still stands. I said it years ago, but I've said eventually I would love to give it over to the young people to decide how they want to operate with it and how they want to work with it in the way, I guess, that serves them best. So, yeah.
Love that. It's interesting when I listen to your story. I go back to what you said around you being at uni and writing about what was important to you, what felt natural to you, and your lecturers not knowing what to do with it because that wasn't their lived experience, that wasn't their world. And you mirror that with the corporate environment a lot of times. It's exactly the same.
How?
There are people who their lives, their experiences are very, very different to their counterparts who predominantly are white. And therefore, there can be that navigation process in the way that you relate, in the way that you communicate, in the way that you share certain things. And having a space like Black at Work, where actually you can be with like-minded people, you can download and pour out and then go back in and be a lot better for it. It's such a crucial thing to have. I know growing up in my career, I did not have that at all. Whereas when I work with clients now and I can provide that space for them, they just feel so good. It's like, I can breathe.
Yeah.
So something like Black at Work is such an amazing community that organizations just need to tap into. because actually all the heavy lifting's already been done for you. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about that. It's just more around how do we actually get them in and support you, fund it and create that space. Because especially in a time where there's so much an attack on D&I spaces, it's needed. It's such a needed space for people just to be with other people, to learn and grow. Because ultimately, when people are learning, growing down and pouring out, the organization actually win because you get better equipped people to navigate those spaces.
Exactly.
So it's such a no-brainer.
Exactly. And I think for us, we always want it to be a space that's for Black employees first and not the other way around, because I think one of the things that can easily happen in this space is that we lose sight of who's actually being affected by these decisions. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things about us that I admire the most, is that we exist for them first, and then allies and people in the organizations that want to do better afterwards. And we don't necessarily want to always be doing the heavy lifting, because I still feel like it's not the job of Black people to educate on, not necessarily to even educate, but to tell people how not to be racist. I think we can point them in the direction of how to learn and do that and work alongside, but it's not our sole job to do the heavy lifting for them. But we want to equip them to be able to learn how to do that once we've moved out of working in that space.
Life of an entrepreneur is not an easy one. There is a lot to navigate. I would say it's like a roller coaster. How have you found it, like stepping outside of your previous role at Salvation Army, obviously starting to run OTB, and then you also do a number of different things. So as Rising Conference member, for example, you run projects like UK Black Business Show, Birmingham and London. Like, there's so many different things to you. How do you find time to be able to hold all these multiple things, as well as what's it like being an entrepreneur, the real talk behind being an entrepreneur?
First of all, don't do it. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I think know why you're doing it, because there are going to be days where it feels like this is so pointless. This is so pointless. And I think on those days, you will have to always go back to the why, and you will always have to reconnect to the reason why you know that you were supposed to start doing that thing in the first place. And my thing has always been people first, right? It's always been empowering the Black community, inspiring the Black community, equipping the Black community in all of the different mediums. And you have to take yourself out of the equation so much and realize it's actually not about you. You're the vessel that things will run through. You're the vessel that things will be delivered through, but it's nothing to do with you in that respect. Of course, it's helped me grow so much. I've learned so much just through the peaks and troughs of running things, but it's not just in existence for me. So on those days where I am struggling and I do feel bad, I've also learned that maybe I'm in misalignment sometimes. So I do have to look and take a step back and check myself and say, why are you feeling like this? Is there something that you're not fully aligning on that you probably need to shift? And I think actually over the last year, that's probably been a big challenge for me, is knowing where I'm aligned and knowing where we're supposed to be going and shifting gears to make sure that we're back on track. So I'd say that that's something that definitely keeps me together. And really just prayer, speaking to friends, reading things that can inspire me, watching things that can inspire me. And sometimes it's just simply looking like taking a step back. One of the things that I've found really valuable is reconnecting with my inner child as well. So I was saying to someone the other day that I've got back into my old cartoons that I used to like watching when I was a kid. Hey Arnold, for instance, I love that show. And I think, it sounds like, but that's what my inner child used to enjoy outside of being a busy, overworked woman, coloring books, things that can help me engage with something else, but also still inspire my creativity. Because when I look at that cartoon show, I'm not only watching it now from a perspective of being a young girl, I'm like, what was the writer thinking when you wrote this episode? What's the lesson in this episode? Who drew that character? Where is it set? Like, I'm thinking about all of the components that go into making something that to me is a classic and something that's outlived and grown with us millennials. So I'm really enjoying kind of the space that I'm in mentally now, because you remember when we first had that discussion and I was like, yeah, I'm done, I'm done, like, I don't see the need to be doing any of this anymore in this way. And you were like, why? But just having those conversations really does push and help me and spur me on. So I'm really grateful.
You mentioned there about knowing when to be able to pivot and know when you're misaligned. What are some of the signs when you're misaligned? Because sometimes, like, you feel like you're living your best life and you don't necessarily want to pivot or move, and it can just be a mask or facade. So how can people pinpoint, like, no, there's something not quite right here, I need to just look into it?
When you start to feel resentful, when you start to wake up and dread doing your daily tasks, when you start to be snappy, little things in your attitude, I always go by I'm really learning to connect my mind with my body a lot more. And I also think about how do I feel somatically, like how is my body reacting to things. Those are some of the signs of misalignment for me. Sometimes it's other things, but those are really big signs that people should definitely look out for.
Because how does that also come with, I love the word you use where it's not about you, you're a vessel. Yeah. But it is very easy for for vessels to just be chucked around, discarded, and not valued.
Yeah.
Especially people who tend to pour out into other people, who focus on other people. It can sometimes get that way, where you don't look after you, the actual vessel. you don't take care of it. You just focus on what's being poured out of it. How have you navigated, or have you learned, or are learning to be able to look after the precious vessel that is yourself?
Do you mean physically or every which way? Okay.
Every which way. I want all the ways.
I think saying no is a big one. And sometimes you don't even have to give a reason. That's fine to just say no and it be a no. My friends will tell you I'm quite good at that.
How does that land? When you do that, you don't give a reason whatsoever.
It doesn't have to be even, I don't mean like no, but and then just that awkward silence. I mean, I'm not able to do that right now, or it's not within my capacity to do so right now, or I would love to, but on this occasion I can't. Like, those are the kinds of ways I'm trying to frame my boundaries and set my boundaries. And sometimes it genuinely is just because I don't have the physical capacity, I don't have the mental capacity. And I also know that there's no point in me saying yes to certain things when I know I'm not going to bring my best. I'm big on excellence, and I'm big on executing things to a high level, and I've always been like that. So when I know I'm not going to perform my best, I'd rather just say, I can't do this right now. I can pass it on to the other person. There's people that I can connect you with. Those are really creative ways of saying no, because you're not then, I guess, denying somebody of something. You're connecting them to other people that they would be great with and that they could collaborate with in other ways. I think physically, I love walking. I walk a lot. This is my partner bought me this, and best thing ever. You can see I've got it on the activity thing there. I love walking. I'm always like, am I getting my 10K steps a day? I go on long walks with a neighbor on the days outside of the days that I walk alone. That's something that really helps. And while I'm walking, it's clearing my head. I can talk to God. I can listen to my music. I can take in some fresh air because I work remotely. So I think it's easy to spend all day in the house and you go to bed and you're like, did I leave the house today? So that's something that I'm really big on, is just being out in nature. Being back in Birmingham, I can walk around the canals and stuff like that, and I'm really enjoying that. It's been amazing for me. And just being around my family, my people, watching my little reality shows when I'm ready. Love is Blind reunion is on tomorrow. Is it tonight or tomorrow? Cannot wait. Bit of guilty pleasure. Like, that's probably one of the only reality things I watch. I think it is. But you know, little guilty pleasure here and there. It does me good.
It's always important to. That's why I loved when you're talking about going back to inner child and watching the cartoons. There's something around tapping into something that seems so far removed from your day-to-day reality that it not only restores, but it sparks a different way of looking at things, and that re-energizes, re-engages that creativity. And sure, there's some neuroscience behind it, but it's such a important thing to do. I remember, before there's an organization I was working with, and there were a bunch of data scientists, and built into their day, I think they have an hour and a half or two where they have to do something completely different. Whole opposite to what they do on a day-to-day basis, which is dealing with code and everything else like that. And they've talked about how much every single time they come back, there's a refreshing, there's a creativity spark, there's a new way of looking at things that they always have, because it's such an important thing just not to get stuck in what you're doing. So those are some great examples of how someone can begin to actually look after themselves, but also re-engage with your inner child. Like, there was such a lot of freeness when we were younger, even though sometimes there's a lot of challenges that came with that, but there's still a lot of freeness that came with that when you were quite younger as well.
Yeah.
How can someone listening to you right now and they're thinking, you know what, Black at Work sounds good, or O2B sounds amazing, how can we support you?
Amazing question, because I'm in that space now of, you need to ask more, you need to do calls to actions. Well, so I'm like, great. Connect with us online. So our website is outtheboxuk.com, and there's a contact form on there. If you're interested in working with us in any way, collaborating, connecting, and just wanting to learn more, please fill that in. If you're interested in working with Black at Work, it's outtheboxuk.com/Black at Work. There's a whole page there dedicated to the work that we do. You can watch some of the videos, you can look through some of the gallery, you can also contact us and also download a deck which tells you everything that we do. And there's a way to be in touch via that. And if you know that your organization needs a burst of energy such as Black at Work, please do reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you and work together.
How do you define leadership?
Servitude.
Say more.
One of the things, do you know what? It's so funny. I'm going to go way back now. I remember being a student, and the church that I was at the time, we were in a Bible study, and our pastor made us take this quiz, and it was, I can't remember, I think it was like, what is one of your spiritual gifts? I think that's what it was. Or what are many of your spiritual gifts? And I remember service being the top one, and I was so upset because at the time, you know, you had teacher, you had prophet, you had evangelist, you had I think there were other things on there, and then things like service and hospitality, and all of those are ways of serving other people, of course. But when I got service and hospitality and other things, I was like, that's a bit boring, isn't it? But as I've grown in leadership, I was salty, man. Honestly. But as I've grown over the years, and you know, I was like 19 probably at the time, 19, 20. I was a young babes. I'm a lot older now, and I've gained so much wisdom just through running so many different things and wearing so many different hats. And the number one thing genuinely is, how are you serving and equipping other people? And that doesn't necessarily mean putting yourself last. It doesn't necessarily mean not helping yourself and putting yourself in good positions, but it just means, how can I give to people so that when they leave me or leave something that I've provided, they're 10 times better? or they've got to the place that they need to be, or they've connected with the person that they need to connect with, or they've networked in the way that they feel comfortable networking. And I think it is literally about service, being about the community, and bringing others into communion and spaces with other people where they feel comfortable and seen and heard. That's leadership to me. And it's also about not being afraid to bring other people alongside you and not being afraid to let them pass you as well. I think that's another big thing for me. So that's why I'm big. I don't hoard opportunities. I don't hoard connections. People will tell you, I'm always like, oh, speak to this person. Oh, I saw this online. You should do this. Like, I'd love to apply for it, but I don't think it's for me. But you should. Like, that's what I really do care about, and that's what brings me joy, and that's what makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing what I know I need to do, and it really does come back to me in so many different ways. So I'm grateful.
Can definitely co-sign and say that when it comes to service, that really does define you. You're someone who goes out of your way to show up for people and be there and support, provide connections, even with what you're doing with OTB and the massive impacts that you've had on over 5,000 people's lives and then some.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a remarkable and amazing thing to be able to see and witness. And there are times even to your detriment, like, you're doing way too much. You need to slow down. Like,
I'm
what I mean?
still
Because
learning. Yeah.
that's who you are. That's your nature. So it's such a pleasure to be able to, one, celebrate people like you, because you do deserve to be celebrated, and also then support and push you further out there so even other people can get behind you and ensure that you're not the only one just doing this, or you have the means and the resources and everything that you need to keep on pouring out into other people as people pour out into you, which I think is really, really crucial. And that for me is the epitome of what community is all about. It's a two-way flow rather than just a one-way.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate what you're doing out there. I know other people do as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. This is Everyday Leadership. We'll see you next week.